Greetings and welcome back to my channel. My name is Masienta. Today we're going to be doing a book review on The Shining by Stephen King. This is honestly, in heads up, this video is going to be filled with spoilers. If you want a spoiler-free review, click off this video. The Shining is a psychological thriller written by Stephen King. This particularly follows around a man named John Torrance in search for a new job as he struggles with his writing career. Jack Torrance gets a recommendation to work at this hotel in Colorado called the Overlook. Basically just take care of the hotel during the off season in winter. What could have been the greatest winter for his family definitely takes a turn for the worse. I've seen the movie first, so I already came into this book knowing the gist of what was going to happen, but I've seen it so long ago that I forgot certain aspects. Now I've read the book and I've rewatched the movie and my whole opinion has changed. Going to be jumping back and forth between the book and the movie quite a lot. Basically just arguing if the book is better than the movie or if the movie is better. For me, I enjoy reading books instead of the movie adaptations because a lot of the time a book will give you the way that a character is thinking. It'll give you their internal monologue. In a film, we have a skewed view of everything. We don't get to know their thoughts in their head. We don't get to know why this character is thinking this, but I always prefer reading the book. In The Shining, he definitely does jump between perspectives of each character, from Jack Torrance, which is the main character, the dad, Wendy Torrance, which is the wife, and Danny Torrance, which is the little boy with the power to shine. Stephen King had written it out. It was so smooth to where I wasn't picking up on it in the first couple chapters, but then after less than a quarter through the book is when I actually started picking up on the nuances of each character, the way that Jack talks about himself, the way that Wendy talks, and the way that Danny talks in his head. It's so wild because you can be reading in Jack's perspective and then the next paragraph will be in Wendy's perspective. The first couple chapters was mostly setting us up and letting us know why in the first place Jack Torrance was coming to the Overlook. Turns out he is an awful drunk who has suffered abuse from his parent. His dad also was an awful drunk. The story does start out with the mention of Jack breaking Danny's arm out of frustration for having messed up his manuscript that he was going to send in to his editor. What I did like about the book was that we got to know more about Danny also in the first couple chapters because he was having like these premonitions, moments in which he would shine and would be able to talk to this imaginary person named Tony. In the movie, we don't get none of this. We see once in the beginning of the film with the connotation with Tony when he was like moving his little finger in the mirror. Like those are the only instances we get of Tony and he's such an important part to the story. I wished the film did more of flashbacks, although I don't know how well they would have been incorporated into the movie. In the book, we go back and forth between him trying to be a better person for his son and the lack of trust there is in his family since his incident of him snapping his son's hand. Get little instances that Jack is a compulsive liar in the book. He is a highly reactive person. We get to know why he gets easily frustrated. Nothing against the actress, but the character itself, she just irritated me because of the way that she was talking. That also has to come along with the abuse that she possibly could be going through. We don't know. It's not shown in the film, but in the book they go into a little bit of a depth as to why she has previous trust issues. The only thing that I wish was included in the film was how Jack was slowly starting to lose his mind. In the book, they go over to the public library and he pulls up records of the Overlook Hotel because he stumbles across a box in the basement. In those boxes, he finds a lot of crime articles of what have happened and like the guests who were murdered on site. So he starts reading these more and it plays a pretty big part in the story because the more he dives into these characters, the more that he's likely to see them. In the story, they just appear. They just show up. And I think it would have made the film a little bit better if we had that little instance of him sitting down in the boiler room, him reading the books, reading the newspaper articles, kind of discovering, like getting that gradual build up as to why things are the way that they are. He was curious. He's a writer. He's gonna do extensive extensive research. The film, they skip over that whole entire part. It's a pretty big argument that happens and a pretty big plot point that happens in the story because he calls up the manager of the hotel and starts an argument with him about writing a book that exposes all of the Overlooked secrets, which then in turn has him walking on eggshells so he doesn't lose his job, which turns to him thinking about Wendy and Dan, and then him having to think about them being shipped off to her mother, which she does not like because she's also abusive. I just wish that it was included in the movie because it would give more context. I mean, the film alone is great. If it's its own category and is completely separate from the book, there are a lot of little things that happen in the story that would have made the story in the movie given it more context as to why Jack was overreacting and being highly reactive to his family. One of the questions that I had was if I could tell at what point he was technically dead. We only get that instance that he's a drunk, possibly, but it doesn't make any sense because we don't have the context to go off of. Stephen King originally wrote Jack as somebody who is constantly wiping his lips because of the abundance of moisture that is coming into his mouth when he's walking around. He does it almost as if it's like a nervous tic, and it's something that Wendy brings to our attention because she's the one who notices it first. She calls him out on it and says, "Have you been drinking? I thought there wasn't any alcohol on the premises," which is something that he would constantly do when he was compulsively drinking, actively drinking. It would have been a nice touch to add into the movie because we could have seen that behavior and it would have triggered something in the audience's mind to pay attention to that. Throughout the book, he's like, I need a drink. I would kill for a drink. Well, I would do anything to have a drink. A lot of the stuff we would not see if it wasn't for Wendy bringing it to our attention. In the movie, she's mostly all she is scared of Jack, which makes sense because she's trying to, you know, fight for her life. Her husband has gone insane and jumped off the deep end. In the movie, she's just scared all the time, and I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't like her character particularly. Other things that I thought was impressive to Jack's character is that he was excessively chewing on Excedrin tablets. It would be cool if we saw that in the film because he was like, I don't want to say he was popping pills. I don't think they would have, actually, now that I think about it, I don't think they would have allowed it into the movie. But it's also one of those things that Wendy brings up to us because he did this a lot when he was drinking a lot. So a lot of the things that I did like about the book would have to be the way that it's written, not specifically the words that were chosen to be used in the book, the lines of how the paragraphs on the page would be broken up. One of the biggest turning points in the story more towards the end is that Danny goes inside his head and he's finally talking to Tony. When he talks to Tony, he discovers that Tony is his adult self traveling back in time to warn him to not come to the Overlook Hotel. In the movie, we don't get that. We do not get that Tony and Danny are connected. If you're going just based off of the movies, it would make it a little bit confusing because imagine it would make it harder to explain in the movie because it wasn't brought up in the first movie. Reading the book though, I will say that learning that his imaginary friend Tony, it makes sense that it's him from the future because he already knows what's going to happen. So he's trying to warn his younger self and saying this is a bad place, bad things happen here. What I keep on saying is I wish they included more of the context of each character, more behind the alcoholism that Jack Torrance had, more of the little nuances that Wendy Torrance was able to pick up, tics of him chewing the Excedrin, of him excessively wiping his lips because of his hankering for having a drink. I just wish they included all of that. They just could have done better. I mean, it's a good film standalone, but if you are going to read and watch them in conjunction with each other, it'll definitely change how you view the movie. But yeah, it's a very long way of me saying I like the book. I would definitely give it a 10 no, I'd say 9 out of 10, but that's it. Ugh. If you were able to sit through this long book review, if you could leave a like letting me know that you enjoyed this book review and tell me your thoughts. Have you read The Shining? Have you watched The Shining? Are there other things that I missed? I would love to know your guys' opinions on the story. Maybe you don't read horror, psychological thriller books. I completely understand. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you in the next video. But until then, bye!